Life is a contact sport. We get nicked up along the way. And if we don't process the emotions that are related to those nicks, it's going to end up in neurosis, disease, hangups, maladaptive behavior.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Adapt You podcast. We're blessed today to have a very unique guest on the show who has a very unique skill set that can impact nearly every listener that's tuning in right now. And we have with us somebody by the name of Norm Plotkin, who is a hypnotherapist based out of Sacramento, California. After Norm's lifestyle made him sick and his illness changed the course of his life, he decided to find meaning in the experience and vowed to never again engage in behaviors that led to his illness, that led to his disease. See, disease is dis-ease. And Norm had cancer. But what exactly were the factors? After deep reflection and hard work, change is hard. Norm dug deep and he dove into the research and sort of went down what most would consider a non-conventional path. Right? He didn't go the traditional route of going to a doctor, to try to mask the symptoms with medications. He wanted to try to get to the root of the cause. What causes disease? What causes cancer? So, and through that journey, teachers began to appear, as the saying goes. And when he changed the way he looked at things, the things that he looked at changed. Right. So Norm's research led him to understand really how cancer develops and the role in the development of how we can reverse those actions through behaviors and emotions and reignite the powerful immune system that we have, right? Then get out of its way, get rid of that fear, get rid of that anxiety, get rid of the guilt that we're holding on to so that your body can do its job, right? Which it has an incredible ability to just heal itself. So Norm learned about ways to engage in his own healing and recovery that were natural and non-invasive and detailed those in his book, Take Charge of Your Cancer. It's a great read, and it gives you really 7 things that you can focus on if you are suffering from cancer to really help you take control and take charge of that. And again, often, sort of down the non-conventional path, things that most people wouldn't think of. Then Norm undertook the study and research of the powerful subconscious mind and techniques moving past programming that our subconscious holds on to, which makes change so hard. I mean, the reality is we have about 60,000 thoughts a day, and they're the same often 60,000 thoughts that we had the day before. So 90% of them are the same as they were yesterday. That's why change is so hard. So Norm's journey took him into the intense arena of hypnotherapy, where he went to a fantastic school, went through a very extensive training with some of the greats, and now helps patients all over the world handle some of the challenges that they deal with, from things such as smoking, weight loss, autoimmune, cancer, just to name a few. So Norm's journey is very interesting. So with that, I want to introduce to the show and have him really start off about his journey, Norm Plotkin, hypnotherapist. All right, Norm, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Great to be here.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, we talked a little bit about your personal journey and how you got into this line of work. And I think your story, because I've read it and I've heard it, is very interesting. And I think it's a great way to start the podcast, because we all have a story as to how we got where we are in life and how we started different careers that we have. And yours is very unique and something that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially as it has to do with hypnosis and how it might be able to help people.
Yeah, so it was a long, strange trip it's been. And if you'd have told me a few years ago that I was going to be a hypnotherapist, I'd probably had a good chuckle. But I was a lobbyist. I spent 25 years in Sacramento state government, a very large state government. It's like the 7th largest economy, and worked my way from clerk to consultant. I lobbied for the Medical Association, and I had my own firm. And I ended up, I got sick. I had cancer. I had papillary carcinoma, which is thyroid cancer. They removed my thyroid, and some lymph nodes, and gave me 2 rounds of radiation. And I just, through the whole thing, wanted to get back to normal. And I didn't realize it was the normal that made me sick. The stress, the drinking, just, it wasn't wasn't congruent with who I was really. I loved the public policy, and it was very exciting, but it's it wasn't what my soul's purpose was, and you don't just jump from that to your soul's purpose. So it went as I navigated the cancer. Teachers began to appear, and began like a 7-year spiritual awakening. And I moved to LA from Sacramento and took a job that was aligned with what I'd been doing before. I was the executive director of a trade association, and I did that for a year, and they didn't renew my contract because I started to work on their ethics. So careful where you go, right? But
Yep.
And then I'm like, now what? And it turned out I was led to there's the only nationally accredited college for hypnotherapy in Los Angeles. And just it turned out that my girlfriend at the time knew someone who had gone there, and we had dinner. We talked a little bit about it. I was looking at becoming a coach, and there was this one coaching school that said, oh, if you add hypnosis, you have an edge on the other coaches. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But they taught a week-long seminar, and I really, if I was going to do this, I wanted to do it all the way. So this HMI is a school in Tarzana, and it's nationally accredited, and it was 18 months, hundreds of hours of instruction and residency. And so it was very substantive, and I jumped in with both feet, and learned about the power of the subconscious mind. I actually started that school with never having been hypnotized before.
I was going to ask that, had you ever been hypnotized, and that's what led you to it, but it sounds like it was more, Norm, had more to do with the fact that you realized the power of the mind and being in touch with yourself and being in control of that subconscious mind, having been through what you went through. Did you sort of identify the cause of your cancer was the stress of your job, but also the stress of the things that the story we tell ourselves in our head and all of that? Like, how did you go from that to hypnotherapy?
Yeah, there's a lot of mental aspects to cancer. Cancer is any disease it's a message. It's a message that you're not on the right track. And it whispers initially, and if you don't hear the whisper, it yells. And if you don't hear the yell, you're going to get reassigned spiritually,
Yes.
cosmically. You know what I mean? So I went through stages of the mental aspect of cancer, and it's never just about the cancer. I was in business with my ex-wife, and she had experience. Men in her family, when they got sick, they died, and so it was difficult. My marriage didn't survive that whole thing, and so I went through a lot of moments that required me to get mentally tough and to kind of create the new story, right? So we all have a story that we tell ourselves, and I come from a storytelling tradition. That's what made me a good lobbyist, and a good analyst and consultant. And so in my experience of marshaling what it took to mentally deal with it, I was diagnosed at the same time with PTSD because I was going through a lot, and they gave me pills that on the side of the box said I may have thoughts of suicide. And I'm like, I don't want these. I'm fighting for my life. I don't want to take something that may make me want to kill myself. No, thank you. So a turning point was a friend of mine. She gotten out of politics and opened a yoga studio. She took me through therapeutic yoga for cancer and taught me how to meditate. That monkey mind will be your undoing if you don't get control of it, because the doctor isn't there at 10 p.m. when the questions, come up and the walls begin to move in on you. And so, so that was kind of the beginning. I learned to meditate. I learned about Ayurveda and yoga, and I did Pilates to get my strength back, because 2 rounds of radiation is a little devastating. So I was emaciated, and I had no thyroid now, which the thyroid controls your whole metabolism. Mm-hmm. And the meditation and the diet and the exercise, these things all began to help me regain my strength and begin to discover the power of the mind. And so then, like I said, teachers began to appear: Wayne Dyer, The Power of Intention; Carolyn Meese, Anatomy of the Spirit; uh, Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing;
Mhm.
Joe Dispenza.
Love Joe.
Yeah,
Joe's great.
there's a ton. Turns out Joe, before he became a chiropractor, went to the same hypnotherapy school that
Oh, no
I went
kidding.
to. Yeah.
I believe that. I find his talks hypnotic. Like I just listened to one the other day for 2.5 hours of him. Just had a long car ride. I mean, he is a gift of bringing logic to a illogical or difficult concept for people to grasp.
Totally.
So yeah, Joe is
Yeah.
great.
So you'll recognize this. Change is difficult. Why must we wait for an illness or a breakup or a job loss to make change? Well, because in any day we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts, and 90% of them are the same as they were yesterday. And memory is unreliable. So if I say, well, why do you do that? And you say, well, 20 years ago, this happened. But you don't remember the details. In fact, you recount them incorrectly. What you remember is how it made you feel. Because when you have an experience, it creates a feeling. A feeling creates an emotion. And an emotion creates some chemistry, and it gets imprinted in your body. And so now you're living a predictable future because of this unreliable past, and it's robbing you of your precious present moment. There's quintessential Joe Dispenza. And I use what I've learned from Joe in my practice every day. Great guy. So these teachers began to appear, and the trajectory is kind of interesting. And I'm just having a conversation with a client today who's done a lot of the work, but hasn't seen any progress. And what we do initially, when we have kind of an awakening, we have a tendency to collect gurus and knowledge. And so, initially I started collecting all of these gurus and knowledge, and I didn't apply it. And that's the critical point: making it real in your life and making that
Practice.
change. So, I went to school. I took it real seriously. Uh, but then, the universe, it has a funny way of intervening, and so I was in a place where I was able to care for both my mom and dad, who weren't together, but had a stroke within a year of each other and died within a year of each other. And I was in a position to take care of each of them in the last year of their life. And so I felt like I fulfilled a soul mission, a soul contract. They brought me in, and I held their hands as they departed and as they transitioned. And so that was really great. And then I moved back to Sacramento, and I really started. In between, I wrote a book, Take Charge of Your Cancer: The 7 Proven Steps to Healing and Recovery. I wanted to share my experience. Now, I didn't make any of this stuff up. In fact, if you read the literature, most of the people who survive cancer use many of these practices. It's radically change your diet, deepen your spirituality, learn to meditate, take charge of your healthcare. You're the one with the skin in the game. Commune with your subconscious mind and have a reason to live. Don't just not want to die. And so that experience, and I thought I wanted to work exclusively with cancer clients and hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I'm certified in hypnotherapy for cancer and stuff, but it's tough. It's tough to do that exclusively. So I got that book written, and I worked for my publisher for a while. I did it through a coach and the author incubator, and then I worked for her for a couple of years as editor and acquisition editor, and that was a great experience. And then I wrote my second book, and I really began to grow my practice. And now I'm seeing, my calendar's full with folks, and it's really interesting. I love being a force for change, positive change in people's lives, and helping them organically and without chemicals, and getting in touch with who they are and understanding that they're not their story, and you can't change what's happened, but you can change how you feel about it. So that's how I got where I am today.
And that's a great story, and it's a great journey and I think it's so important to hear it, because it really sort of gives an idea of how you got so deeply rooted into this through your personal experience. This isn't just like a job for you, right? This isn't something that just pays the bills. This found you, right? Or you found it, or, somewhere there in the middle, you found each other, and now you're applying it and you're making an impact on people's lives. What's interesting about hypnotherapy is that I think it's a mystery to most people. It's honestly a mystery to me. I will tell you that my older brother, battled addiction for a while and then cleared that all up. He's been straight for many years. He's doing fantastic. But there was the smoking. He couldn't stop smoking cigarettes. Tried everything from what I recall, the patch and Nicorette gum, all these different things, books. And I remember he went to a hypnotherapist, and in one session, done, never smoked again. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. I'm like, I wonder what else these guys can do, right? And this was a long time ago. So I'm just excited to get on with you to hear, okay, explain exactly what is happening with hypnotherapy. And then after that, I want to sort of debunk some of the traditional thoughts of hypnosis that people have with, like, when they go to Vegas and they see people, clucking like chickens, as I've heard you say. So as fun as that is to watch, I don't think people come to you because they want to cluck like a chicken. So explain, like, down, to the details scientifically, like, what is actually happening. If you hypnotize me, what's happening to me? What's happening in my mind? What's going on?
So for the longest time, there was no way to measure or prove. So it was seen as largely anecdotal. And the evidence-based crowd dismissed it because we couldn't. But now we have complex machines that can measure brain function and what's going on. And so on its most basic level, it's deep relaxation with focused concentration. Okay. Hypnosis means sleep in Greek, but you're not asleep. It's more like the dream state. When I put someone in trance, their eyes are likely to be in REM, rapid eye movement. And well, they'll hear, like, I'll have some people at the end, they'll come out of it and they'll say, I think I was asleep. I thought I heard myself snore. I said, and I'll ask them, well, when you're at home and you sleep, do you hear yourself snore? They're like, no. I'm like, so you heard yourself snore. So you weren't asleep. That just meant you were deeply relaxed and you snortled a little bit. And so I can give you a couple of definitions, textbook definitions. Where's the from the American Psychology Association, hypnosis is a state of inner absorption, concentration, and focused attention. It's like using a magnifying glass to focus the rays of the sun and make them more powerful. Similarly, when our minds are concentrated and focused, we're able to use them more powerfully. That's from the American Psychological Association. There's another from some research. Hypnosis can be seen as a waking state of awareness or consciousness in which a person's attention is detached from his or her immediate environment and is absorbed by inner experiences such as feelings, cognition, and imagery. Hypnotic induction involves focusing of attention and imaginative involvement to the point where what is being imagined feels real. By the use and acceptance of suggestions, the clinician and patient construct hypnotic reality. So these are a couple of clinical explanations. Dr. David Spiegel at Stanford has been doing a bunch of research, and they've done functional MRIs and other brain measurements. And so here's just a little excerpt. Some of Spiegel's recent research has demonstrated a drop in activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate, part of the salience network of the brain, a context decoder, or in layperson's terms, a part of the brain that alerts you to what you should pay attention to and what you can ignore. This part of the brain, which fires up when there's something to worry about, actually calms down during hypnosis. A second change was observed in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain where you plan things and carry out routines, and the insula, the part of the brain that helps regulate body functions. These two parts of the brain began syncing up in their connectivity, like altering blood pressure and heart rate, And this suggests that during hypnosis, the brain intensifies its connection to the body. We can see evidence of this when the hypnotized individual experiences a slower heart rate and rhythmic breathing with a likely corresponding decrease in blood pressure. So back in the 18th century, when Franz Mesmer was practicing animal magnetism, and the court of Versailles was convened to investigate whether there was anything to this, upon which Benjamin Franklin sat on this court of inquiry, and they dismissed Mesmer as just a guy who was persuasive, and it was nothing more than the persuasion of the hypnotist. But that story, today we say someone was mesmerized, right? So for the longest time, it was dismissed as subjective and anecdotal. So now we know what's going on. On stage, the same thing is going on. These people have agreed to do it as part of entertainment. You can't make someone do something they don't want to do. Anyway, otherwise anyone could go rob the grocery store with using hypnotic techniques, right? Or I could get a date
you can't hypnotize, you're right, to get you a date every night, right?
Yeah. So it's within reason. So we will suspend, if we're willing, we will suspend these control networks in our frontal lobe to allow to go somewhere. So what happens is I just create a highly relaxed and deeply relaxed and highly focused concentration. And I'll take them on imagery journeys, and I'll paint a picture. I'll engage all of their senses. So, there's the two parts of the mind. There's the conscious mind that we believe is in control. That's reason, logic, analysis, decision-making, willpower. And then there's the subconscious mind. Problem is, it's like the iceberg. The conscious mind is the tip, and the subconscious mind is like your iOS. It's your operating system. And it was programmed when you were 0 to 8 or 9 years old. So everyone in your sphere of influence during that time, you mirrored and matched and patterned yourself after. So you're not born liking cigarettes. Somewhere along the line, your subconscious programming allowed for it. So the conscious mind reads the cigarette pack that says the Surgeon General says this is going to kill you. And the conscious mind measures it against the subconscious programming. And the subconscious programming says, no, it's okay. And so then the conscious mind comes back with a rationalization. Well, Aunt Sally smoked until she was 90, 2 packs a day, and she was smoked until she was 90. And we all die anyway someday. And I'll be old when. So you see, I'm saying it's this rationalization because you're not born like cigarettes.
It's like the devil and the angel, right, on your shoulder, so to speak, is another, I think, analogy of what it describes: logic and reason versus, like you say, subconscious programming. And it's the old captain and the crew, right, of a ship. You got the captain up front steering, but it's the crew that's really steering that boat, right?
That's right.
So with subconscious programming, as a hypnotherapist, like, you're battling against that iceberg, that big, immovable, somewhat seen, at least metaphorically, as an immovable object that's underneath the water. It's big and it's mighty, right? So you're accessing the mind, I guess, through the conscious mind to try to access the subconscious through your techniques. And then what's happening there? Are you trying to guide people to come to their own decisions and conclusions to reframe that subconscious mind, or to maybe make sense of it so they're aware of it and then go, almost like what you would expect from journaling or meditation? And is it, in a way, is it kind of like, is hypnosis somewhat like a guided meditation, like in that you're helping people arrive at that, that beta wave state, where they have that deeper connection to the subconscious? I know that was a lot of questions there, but
yeah, you anticipated that was a many splendored question, Derek. So think of it this way. I always like to explain it this way to people. Think of the conscious mind as a Labrador retriever, and I throw it a stick, and it runs off and chases that stick while I talk to the subconscious mind. And another keyword that you used there is a reframe. We get ourselves into a groove, and we tell ourselves this story, and real easily we could move ourselves off that story, but we get committed to it. And so there's two portions of my session. There's the cognitive portion, and then there's the hypnotic portion. In the cognitive portion, I do a history. We do a deep dive into their experiences, especially around their childhood. I want to know what the high points were, what are the traumas. The trauma can be a bitter disappointment. It doesn't have to be watching somebody die in front of you. You know what I mean? So,
and this is, are they hypnotized at this point, or is just a discussion at this point?
Well, it's some gray area because there is conversational hypnosis. Milton Erickson was a brilliant psychiatrist who used conversational hypnosis. And I, as a lobbyist, I realized now I was doing some conversational hypnosis and didn't even know it. But it's for the most part cognitive. We're just having a conversation. They may go into trance a little bit, but I want to know their experiences. I want to know the high points or low points of their life. A lot of people come in for weight loss, and the weight is just a layer of protection from the outside world and stuff. So I always uncover more stuff. And that's, that early work I did as an analyst and a consultant has been really, really helpful. Because one of the biggest mistakes that providers make across the modalities is trying to treat symptomatically. If you can, go for cause. Otherwise, you just got a Band-Aid and it's going to come up in some other neurotic fashion, right? So in the cognitive portion, I take detailed notes. I ask them about their experiences, and I'm a reflective listener. So I listen to their words. Their words and their mannerisms and their idioms are very super important, because if I give them mine when they're in trance, they're likely to reject or resist. There's a lot of resistance, all right? So, and I'll remind me to come back to this in a second, but so it's really important that I use their words and build stories around their experience and give that back to them in trance, because they're more readily, we're very suggestible to ourselves. And I'm sure you and people can talk yourself into or out of just about anything, right? So,
of course.
Unless you're invested in that story, and then you're invested in that story. So, it's a two-part session, and the first part is we get to kind of the origin, and then in the hypnosis, then I do a reframe through imagery and metaphor and storytelling that helps them imagine a different outcome. And so back to the resistance part. A lot of time, what happens is we have these experiences, and they can be painful, and we come up with a defense mechanism or a behavior that will address it, right? So it's a protective response that we can engage in, and
like eating too much or smoking, right? It's masking a deeper problem is what you're suggesting. Okay.
Yeah. These are habits that we can form, but there's a lot of different things that they can manifest, but it becomes a behavior to, another example is, fear of abandonment, issues. Someone left them, someone died, someone left them, someone broke up with them. And then later in subsequent relationships, they'll push someone away before they can leave them, right? So they act in ways, they're not even conscious of the fact that they're pushing them away, or they're acting in negative, maladaptive ways. But it's the part of their programming. So now the threat could be long gone, but the behavior persists because the subconscious mind is afraid of being exposed to it. So now you have this behavior that persists, even though the threat that gave rise to it is long gone. And they don't even know why they are engaging in that behavior. They may not even know they're engaging in the behavior. Sometimes I got to sift through the sand to see exactly what it is that they're doing that's causing the problems in their life, right? So there's some forensic stuff that we get to do. And it's always kind of interesting. These aha moments are like, why didn't I see it? I'm like, because you're too close. You're too close to it, right? and you didn't look at it in this context, the context of you had this experience and it was threatening, and now you adapted this behavior, and the threat is gone. And back to Dr. Joe and the change, right? And the 60 to 70,000 thoughts, 90% of which are the same as they were the day before. And so you've had this experience, and it created a feeling, which created an emotion, which created chemistry, which you imprinted in your body. And you may be holding on to it tightly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people hold on to these things tightly. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't want to. Sometimes I have to get real firm. I have to exercise therapeutic leverage to get them to dislodge the behavior and see that, help them see the perspective.
That's impressive, and you. I appreciate you going really deep on that, sort of explaining and sort of demystifying what happens behind the your door when somebody comes in there, because I think a lot of people, again, they viewed hypnosis as something they saw on a Vegas stage and don't realize that, I mean, disease, we used that word earlier, it stands for dis-ease, right? So there's something going on, like you said, there's a signal. And a lot of times it has something to do with what's going on upstairs. And I think a lot of us dismiss that because we're always in the habits of focusing on the physical, right? We brush our teeth every day, we put on our shoes, we go to the gym, we watch what we eat. But very few of us spend time to focus on really what frames our entire reality and how we perceive things, and that's our mind, through things like you said, meditation, something you brought into your life, made a huge impact. So being able to get people back on the rails, so to speak, by allowing them to tap into their mind, kind of walk through some of the things that you can affect, right? So I think other than, like, I think what most people think of hypnosis, clucking like a chicken on stage, that's for show, right? For hypnotherapy, which you do, what are some of the things that people come in for traditionally that you affect? And then some of the things that are like, kind of like, most people be like, wow, I didn't know you could have an impact on something like that. Obviously smoking is one we talked about, but
Yeah.
some other ones.
So you have to be careful, because if you fully expound on all the things that it looks like a panacea, and people are very skeptical, uh, as pie in the sky, But so let's start with the psychosomatic.
Okay.
In the 70s, there's a whole body of medicine, psychosomatic. So what happens is people have these emotional responses, and they somatize it into their body.
Mm-hmm.
And some real basic things are unexplained leg pain, you can't run away from your problems. Unexplained back pain, you're carrying the weight of the world. Unexplained arm pain, you can't fight your way out. I've done a lot of work with people with fibromyalgia and other autoimmune, and it's really just they've somatized some emotional response, and they carry it in their body now. So psychosomatic medicine is, and the term, it's all in your head. Well, mind body connection is super powerful, and there's another body of allopathic medicine called psychoneuroimmunology. There's a department at UCLA that's out front, but it's not much more than Eastern kind of mind body, but mind psychoneuroimmunology, right? So it's staying healthy with your mind and body. And so there is a psychological origin to all of what's ails us, honestly. If you fall on your bicycle and break your arm, there's no psychological. that's a mechanical broken arm, right? So you've broken your arm. But when we talk about dis-ease, if you dig deep enough, there is very likely to be an emotional origin. So in the case of my first breakthrough on a fibromyalgia case was this woman. She was prior military, and she worked in a man's world, executive, and she's very strong, and she had fibromyalgia for 9 years, and for 8 years the doctors, they gave her pills to manage the pain. And she kicked the pills and said she was ready to do something about this. And so I did a history. She had a rough childhood, and bootstrapped herself up through the military and went to school, and worked in professional world. But she went through. I asked her, what was going on in your life when it started? No one ever had asked her that. What was going on in your life when it started? And turns out she'd gone through a terrible divorce, custody, and she couldn't handle the emotional aspect of it. Her body was tough, so she somatized that emotional pain into her body in the form of these unexplained immune symptoms. And no one took the time to correlate the timing and the origin. And so I asked her if she was ready to let go of it. She said, "Oh, if I could let go of it, I'd have done it a long time ago." I'm like, "Okay, but if you could, would you? Are you ready?" She said, "Yes." So I took her into hypnosis, and I did an arm raising, so I had her put all of her pain and all of it, everything, and make it stiff as a rod and let it go. And you can just see she just go like this, right? And so then I had asked her before, what will you do? How will you feel? What will life look like if this was gone? And I took copious notes about all the things she was going to do, all the people she was going to see and hang out with, and all the things she was going to do. So then I gave it back to her in trance. And I said, "Okay, now when you're ready to let this go, your arm is going to begin to lift and rise. Lifting and rising, rising and lifting. Your arm will lift and rise and lift." And nothing happened. And when I was a new hypnotherapist, I'd have been mortified, but I got a lot of experience. So I was patient. Mm-hmm. And I sat, I did nothing. And I said, "Lift and rise, rising and lifting, lifting and rising." Nothing. And so then I said it again. When you're ready to let this go, your arm will begin to lift and rise and lift. And there's time distortion in hypnosis. You have to be very patient. You can tell someone to open their eyes and close their eyes, and a minute later they do it. So okay. I sat for what seemed like an eternity to me. For her, it was a blink of an eye. And so all of a sudden, the arm begins to jerk, lifting and rising, small jerking motions, lifting and rising, rising and lifting. And she's out here like this. So now I just connected her mind and her body to let go of the fibromyalgia, because she wants to do all the things I just listed to her that she listed to me. And then I said, okay, it's gone. Ready to come up from hypnosis now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes open, wide awake. And I woke her up and her arms out like this. And so the first thing she saw was her arm signaling that she was ready to let go of it.
So when she awakes, does she recall everything that just happened? Like everything that you walked her through? Will she recall that? And then what was the outcome thereafter? Like how did she feel immediately thereafter? And then now so many years or days or months afterwards.
Yeah. So this was the 4th or 5th session. So the more you experience it, the better you get at it. So she's heard some of it she didn't. She drifted and floated, but she knew this, mm-hmm. And then she connected immediately when she was awake and cognitive. She immediately saw that. So we finish up, and she has mixed emotions about the experience, and I give her 2 weeks to let it set in. And I texted her, "How you doing? Ready for your next session?" She said, yes, I'm ready. And I'm like holding my breath. And I'm like, "Okay, what do you want to work on?" Holding my breath. She's like, "Motivation. I've been sleeping in and depressed for so long. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm ready to get out and rock and roll." So awesome. So we went into motivation, and so we finished her 6-session package, and she was a changed person. She's all over social media. She is out. She bought a Dodge Challenger, purple, and
just living her life now. Yeah, that's amazing. What a good story, especially with fibromyalgia, which can be so like sort of cryptic and misunderstood, right? And it's
doctors count up the symptoms and put them in the autoimmune bucket and say, "Here's pills to cover the pain."
As you said, they focused on the symptoms, not on the cause of the issue, with her. And as you suggested, and I think a lot of us can understand, it's a lot of it's upstairs, especially with disease. And it's funny, I got to imagine, just because hypnotherapy isn't as mainstream as it should be, that people come to you, it sounds like with her instance, the last resort, right?
I am,
Where in
I am,
reality, it should probably be the other way around, right?
I am the last resort. If people come to me and they've tried everything, I'm like, huh, I'm glad you came in.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it. I've heard it 1,000 times. I had another client. She was 75. She had mast cell disease, Lyme disease, several autoimmune. She couldn't leave her house. Her kids couldn't visit her. And again, what was going on in your life when this started? What was first? And it was the Lyme disease. I said, what was going on in your life? She goes, I was at a park. I'm like, no. I'm not asking you when you think you got bit by a tick. What was going on in your life? And she hemmed and hawed. I had done a history. She real tough upbringing, other side of the tracks, married, loveless relationship, one child, and so she's hemming and hawing and not really getting. I said, no. And so I pressed, no, what was going on in your life then? I had an affair. I'm like, oh, okay. She was from Pennsylvania. We were doing it by Zoom. I said, are you Catholic? She said, yeah. I said, did you confess? Yes. So the priest and God forgave you? Did you forgive yourself? She locked herself in this prison over the guilt, shame, and blame. I said, I want you to write down all the things you've been diagnosed with on a piece of paper, crumple up and burn it, light it on fire. And it set her free. She'd been carrying that. So back to your original question, what are some of the things? Stuttering, smoking, weight loss. But the weight loss, I see a lot of clients, women, middle-aged, that's stubborn, 15, 20 pounds that they can't no matter what they do. And there's, in the history, it always comes up, there was abuse, sexual, physical, sometimes just emotional. But anyway, it's more rampant. I really have to guard my energy when I get into some of this stuff, because, my inner Marine wants to kill anybody who would hurt a child. You know what I mean? It's like,
of course, yes.
And that, that's not consistent with my spiritual self now, right? But I still have, so I have to just stay really centered and grounded and balanced when I help them deal with some of the things that what they've experienced. And I just had a client, her grandfather, and grandma was in on it, held the door, and because she was just glad it wasn't her. And, and so, we had this real spiritual moment, this energetic moment, like he's dead. She couldn't, I wanted her to do radical forgiveness, which is a series of 3 letters. She said she fretted for a week, couldn't do the letters of radical forgiveness, came in, I just can't do it. She cried, whole box of Kleenex. And I said, well, you have to, if you forgive him, it's not condoning what he did. It's setting that baggage down and letting it go. And he's here. I asked her about his experience, and he had a terrible upbringing. I said, do you think he bought this off the shelf? Do you think he didn't feel bad about what he did? He knew he was wrong. And when she found her way to let it go and let him go and forgive him, but not condone, but forgive, and to she set herself free. Well, she came in light as a feather the next session. And she said she felt like it allowed him to cross over. That sounds
amazing.
A little bit of woo. Sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it's real to her.
And I think that's what's important. And I think the fact that you use people's own words, their own thoughts, their imagery, so that they almost can guide with your guidance, convince themselves. It's not you jamming thoughts into their mind. They're naturally going to be more accepting of it, right?
It's just unethical to do that. It's really, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't belong there. Yeah, people say, I don't want to let you in my head. I'm like, I don't get in your head.
Yeah.
I'm
You're in
only
your
as
own
good as,
head.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're in your head. Yeah. I'm so only as good as the material that you give me. You know what I mean? So,
And so from the perspective, if somebody is listening right now and they're on the fence, right? They're like, okay, I never considered hypnotherapy, but they're having some sort of an issue, right? So like you said, weight loss, sleep, fibromyalgia, something disease based that they're trying to cross that threshold. Maybe they've tried some things and they really, or maybe they haven't tried anything and they want to try you first. What are some of what wisdom or what nugget can you provide to help people make that leap to call you up and to book an appointment with you, to take that next step? Because it sounds like they don't need to be in Southern California, right? They can do it all via Zoom, which is great. I didn't know that. I thought you had to tinker the watch and you had to be right in front of me, but apparently not.
no, I've done hypnotherapy with people all over the world. Some people do it on the phone. Zoom is a really good platform for me because I want to see the rise and fall of your chest, that you're breathing, your cheeks flatten out, your eyes are in REM. So here's a couple nuggets. It's not a loss of control. If at any moment you're uncomfortable by anything that was said or done, you could just say, stop, I'm done, I'm out. You're not asleep. It's not a loss of control. You may hear everything. The first one, you're going to be guarded a little bit. So the first one, you have to understand you're not going to let yourself go very deep. We go into hypnosis every day. When you're driving home from work, pull in a driveway and don't remember the trip, you're in hypnosis. Radio advertisers know that. That's why drive time is so expensive. Or that twilight right before sleep and your eyes are kind of fluttering. That's hypnosis. Good time to break out a little notebook and write down some goals. Or when you're reading a good book and you're like in it, or watching that movie and you feel like you're a character. These are all hypnotic experiences. You're in trance. So it's not as strange. It's not going to be something that moves mountains for you. It's going to feel kind of natural. The unnatural thing is the fear you feel surrounding it and the anxiety you have about experiencing it. So it's not a loss of control. It's deep relaxation, it's focused concentration. At 30 minutes in trance is going to be like a 3-hour nap. I have wound up lawyers who come in once a month just because it's the only time they can relax and they recharge their batteries. It's a way to get at just about anything. And it's a safe place to explore early experiences that may have given rise to later behavior. Okay. It's very common. Life is a contact sport. We get nicked up along the way. And if we don't process the emotions that are related to those nicks, it's going to end up in neurosis, disease, hangups, maladaptive behavior.
Wow.
So, all the usual stuff, smoking and bad habits. There's also performance. I've helped golfers make the ball seem like it was this big. I've helped people public speaking. I've helped people, I had a client who was he used to teach literature, then he got the opportunity to be a magazine publisher, but he had to sell advertising and he hated it. And so I helped him see it as gold calling instead of cold calling and just reframing, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Sales pros, sales teams, overcoming objection, really, really visualizing the numbers, because sales, every other part of a business has a process. Mm-hmm. And you can create a sales cycle, but there's nothing that's going to obviate the need to get on the phone and call, and you're going to face rejection. And, imagine if shipping was only 25% of the time successful, right? So there's a lot of psychological, so there's a corporate application. See what I mean? When I start down this road, it's any human endeavor is applicable. And so then people start to get cynical. So, if you have, if you have an issue, hypnotherapy likely can help you benefit from it.
That's awesome. And you talked for a second there. I want to back up just the beginning when you started talking to answer that question. You talked about I think the term was focus concentration. You almost feel like you're would you equate it to what some people refer to as like a flow state, or being sort of like in the zone, for athletes that are in the zone, so to speak, where you're so dialed in that everything around you, like you said, the basket seems bigger for the basketball, like, and it's almost in, I don't want to say slow motion, right? But it's just more easily consumable. Like you
Yeah.
said, focus concentration, I think is a great term. So is that sort of along the same lines as the environment that is being created through hypnotherapy,
Yeah.
just to help better digest it?
Yeah. So what of the conscious mind or the subconscious mind, which do you think is at play when an athlete practices over and over and over and over again and then goes out and performs? It's the subconscious mind.
Subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like you don't have to relearn how to ride a bike or drive a stick shift. These are all subconscious processes. And the athlete or the performer or the musician, they practice and they create programming pathways, neural pathways, which is subconscious programming. And so it's flow state. Deep meditation can be hypnotic. Hypnosis can be deeply meditative. There's a fine line between these. Meditation, you take yourself in. Hypnosis, usually there's a facilitator. And, because I am a good storyteller, I take the elements of their story, tell it back to them. And
That's
so,
awesome.
and help them into flow state to where they can begin to change the programming.
And that's what it's all about. I think is my biggest takeaway from this is really helping people address that iceberg, right? That's underwater, and to reprogram that subconscious mind that maybe was programmed through traumatic or repetitive events that maybe they've latched onto during that early developmental stage of their life. So you're there to sort of unlock it, help them let it go, crack old patterns and frame new ones with their words and with their images, which what a powerful tool. And I think you're right in that some people think it's mesmerizing, but when you start to really understand the way the mind works, you truly submit to it and understand just all that we don't know. And the fact that you've been able to clinically prove it with MRIs and CAT scans that certain parts of the brain are lighting up and new neural connections are being made. I mean, I don't know how you argue it. So how do people get in contact with you? So they're like, Norm, I've got something I want to work with you on. How do we find you?
Real quick before I go there, I want to give a nugget to everyone. And this is something
Please.
everyone can apply in their life. It's a Reader's Digest version of the Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles is a 3-volume set like this, but this is, it will change your life. In any moment in your heart space, you're either in love or fear. It's a light switch, on, off, love, fear. I coach all of my clients, come up with an image, an icon of something that represents love. It can be a red flower, a rose, a red heart, a picture of your puppy or your child, whatever image it is that evokes immediately love, the thought love, have that in your back pocket. And 20 times throughout the day, just grab it and put it in your heart space. We're living in a very fearful world. There's a lot of fear going on. There's mass hypnosis around us. Massively. Stay in a place of love and have your icon. And throughout the day, am I coming from a place of love or fear, and bring that icon into your heart space. So love or fear, and it will change.
That's awesome. Life. That's such a great nugget. Like you said, it's a light switch. It's going on or off. So always check yourself and make sure the switch is in the right spot.
That's right. And so normanplotkin.com, NORMANPLOTKIN, normanplotkin.com. I'm on Facebook, Norman Plotkin Inc. I'm on IG, Norman Plotkin CHT, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on I'm trying to do YouTube. it's the fisheye. It's hard. As a lobbyist, I spoke to large groups of people. I've given speeches. I've written speeches. I like the human part. I'm getting better. Getting better at the fisheye. It's like look into the eye. But at some point, I'll probably have a YouTube channel. But in the meantime, my website has my story. It's got my mission statement, my vision, my values. You really get to know who I am, because here's the thing: in order for this to work, you got a authority, a doctrine, or a paradigm, and you got to feel something. That's what it's required for a hypnotic modality. And so the authority, you can see my certificates on. When I went to school, I've learned this stuff, and I've practiced it for over 10,000 hours now. Malcolm Gladwell, mastery is 10,000 hours, right? And you'll feel something if you come in. And you should, no matter who you see, if you want to try hypnotherapy, make sure that you can get a certificate in a weekend. And I love everybody, and I wish them the best of luck too. But you really should, someone who's qualified. And you have to have rapport. You have to kind of like them, and you got to trust that they're going to be able to help you. And so any good hypnotherapist is going to put you at ease, establish rapport, and demonstrate that they're capable. And these are the things that you'll know in your heart and your gut, that second brain, if it's right for you. But there's no side effects. There's no chemicals. There's really no downside. You might be light in the pocket a few bucks, but you know what I mean? Anything
but it's money well invested, though.
Exactly.
Money well invested.
That's right. Anything of value has a cost.
Agreed, 100%. And I appreciate you sharing that and sharing where people can find you, because you have an invaluable service and something that needs to be more readily used, known, and understood. So I might be reaching out to you myself, because I just have a curiosity and something I would personally submit to. I'd have to find an area that I'd want to address. But I would love for maybe the opportunity to go through it, because I've never actually done it. But I would want to do it with purpose. And I can think of a few things we'll talk about offline, but I might be your next customer. So I appreciate the time, Norm. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
It's been a pleasure, Derek. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Adapt You podcast today. Our goal with this show and all of our content is to deliver you the guests and the respective knowledge necessary to help you change something in your life. Everyone who listens to this show has something they want to affect and something they want to change. And our goal is to help give you the knowledge necessary to take you down that path on becoming the absolute best version of yourself. If you like what you heard today, please tune in to all of our shows, and also check us out in social media. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and check out our website and have some great content on there as well. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next show.